My dad was a minister 60 years in the Nazarene denomination. And I know I'm probably considered big, at least going this way. But I would have to look up at my dad. He was a huge man at one time, and not just this way. He was big and bulky, and all the church podiums at that time, the pulpits, of course, they open now, but then they were like regular podiums. He would have to look down like this to read his Bible or whatever he was reading because they were all made for average sized people. So my uncle Conroy, he was a carpenter. He said, I'm going to build you one that fits you. And he did. He built a big old nice podium that would fit a person that was 6'7". And on Sunday morning between Sunday school and preaching, I go up and I'm looking at this podium, and I'm probably about his age. And I opened the door and I thought, well, man, that's a lot of space inside that podium. So I got in and I closed the door. And they came up all of a sudden and started singing, and I was scared to get out. So I said, I'm going to have to stay in this podium in this dark to preaching over. They just missed church. And the longer it went on, the more afraid I got. And I never will forget it that Dad started preaching, and I was thinking, what's going to be the worst? I'm going to get punished. They find out I'm in this podium, or am I going to stand here and let a black widow spider bite? And so right in the middle of his sermon, I pushed the door open and looked up. And he's backing up looking down. And I said, hey. And he pulls me out by one arm. And, of course, my mom's name was Jacqueline, but he called her Jack. Jack, take him outside. Another Sunday. And another spanking behind that old church down there with a plum bush. But, I often heard that preachers' children are the worst. That might be true. I don't know. We were pretty bad. Message this Sunday is when God puts us or seems to put us on hold, there's some valuable lessons to be learned. Most of us have experienced going down a curvy road and get behind somebody slow and having to wait and wait. And we don't like to wait. This morning you had to wait on the pastor to get here. I mean, that is the bottom right there. And if you call one of these call centers, you got to wait. They've matched this one for English, matched that for that. And finally you'll get to where you're going, and they might tell you, well, the approximate wait time is 10 minutes. So you put on hold again. And we do not like being put on hold. We don't even like waiting at McDonald's, and McDonald's is pretty fast most of the time. Sometimes. Supposed to be. But we have to wait and wait. And these days when we got cell phones and email and microwaves, and if we had to be without electricity 10 minutes, it just drives us up a wall. And especially my children. Then they drive me up a wall. And it seems like a lot longer than 10 minutes. The Bible certainly tells us in Psalms 27:14, and it's easy to preach this, that we're to wait on the Lord. It's easy to preach this and tell somebody this as long as I'm not the one having to wait. But tell a child that, that's getting abused, or tell somebody that's just going through a death or divorce, or as Junior is as a terrible illness, tell them that you got to wait. What do we mean when God puts us on hold? Let me read you this. And I'm going to tie this in. You're going to like this. Matthew 15:21 through 28, we can read about a lady who did not immediately get a prayer answered. Jesus was silent and did not immediately respond to her prayer request. We all been there? Yes. Let's read the verses of Matthew. Then Jesus went out from there and departed to the region of Tyre and Sidon. And behold, a woman of Canaan came from that region and cried out to him, saying, have mercy on me, O Lord. Listen to this now. O son of David, my daughter is severely demon-possessed. These days we don't like to talk about demon possession unless it's in a movie or something. You don't hear it mentioned that much. But he answered not a word to her. Didn't even give her an answer. His disciples came to him and urged him, saying, send her away, for she cries out for us. But he answered and said, I was not sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Now, what does that mean? That means he was sent for everybody, not just the Jews, not just the children of Israel, for everybody. Then she came and worshipped him, saying, Lord, help me. But he answered and said, it is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the little dogs. And she said, yes, Lord, yet even the little dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table. Then Jesus answered and said to her, O woman, great is our faith. Let it be to you as you desire. And her daughter was healed from that very hour. From that very hour. Now, I'm going to paraphrase this just a little bit how we got here. But Jesus, along with his disciples, had traveled northwest about 50 miles to this town known as Tyre. Maybe they went there to visit some of the disciples' relatives or something. It don't say. Jesus took time while he was there in Gentile country to show his love for the Gentiles. At that time, Jews and Gentiles did not have much to do with each other at all. The Bible speaks at this time of only two types of people, Jews and Gentiles. For many years, that was the only distinction ever made that you read in the Bible. Either you were over here a Jew or you were over here a Gentile. But regardless if you were a Jew or a Gentile or black or white or man or woman, salvation is for all people. The woman grew up where they had beliefs that there were many gods. They were gods of the sun, gods of the moon, gods of the wind, gods of this, gods of that. So you just prayed to whichever god you needed at the time. But her daughter was being severely tormented by a demon, and she needed some real help. Somewhere along the line, she must have heard about Jesus Christ and being the son of David and the Messiah, because she sought him out and took advantage of this moment of him being in her region. She said, have mercy on me, O Lord, son of David. My daughter is severely demon-possessed. But Jesus answered not a word. Jesus put this lady on hold for a moment. Can you imagine that? You praying directly to Jesus, he don't even answer you. I believe this lady probably kept repeating this request because she didn't go anywhere. And the next verse, the disciples urges Jesus to send this woman away and told him she cries after us. And there spoken not a word from Jesus. What do you do? Ask yourself this question this morning. When God puts you on hold. Everyone has prayed before, and every one of us have gotten an answer from God at one time in our life, if you pray. But what do we do when God puts us on hold? Well, number one is we keep on trusting Jesus. Number one, who has always been faithful to us in our past. I may not know about this present moment, but I know about yesterday. I know he was faithful last week. I know he was faithful last month, and I'm pretty sure he's going to be faithful to me tomorrow. I must keep on trusting in Jesus, who has been faithful to me in all of my yesterdays. This woman not only gets the silent treatment, and may think Jesus is uncaring, but they asking Jesus, the disciples are, let's send her away. So she can't even make a request. But she kept trusting in Jesus. She believed that Jesus would eventually speak. And that's what we must do. We must keep trusting in Jesus because he will eventually speak to our needs. Just remember, when God puts you on hold, he still loves you and he has a word for you. Just hang on and stay online. You will, it's like one of those phone calls, you will get an answer sooner or later. God is going to speak to your problem. Many Bible characters wonder when God would speak to them. Job lost his entire family. He lost all his possessions. He prayed and asked God, and he didn't get an answer. God allowed Satan to touch his life. Abraham was 100 years old, and he prayed for a child. Now, I prayed for one late in life, but I don't think I'm going to be doing that at 100. But I might. But for many years, he had to wonder, am I ever going to get this child? The prophets by the end of the Old Testament, it was 400 years from the Old Testament, and Malachi to the starting of the New Testament, and Matthew, 400 years, nothing. So the prophets had to be wondering, well, is this Messiah coming or not? We've heard all this prophesying. We heard all this other, I mean, is he coming? And from the time that I have been a child, you know, I hear Jesus is coming back. Of course, times now pretty much fulfilling itself and looking like he is. So you keep trusting in Jesus. He will eventually speak to our needs. There was only one time when God didn't speak, and that was when his son was hanging on the cross. And for that second, he looked away. But this brings us to the second point in our message. First, remember, keep trusting in Jesus. Second, when God puts us on hold, take inventory of where you stand with God. Where do you stand with God? This woman's approach was like this, and don't miss this. It's very easy. Please listen to verse 22. She says, "O Lord, thou son of David." She came with a Jewish approach, like she was a Jew. And that didn't work. That's opposite sending her away. She's not one of us. The next thing this woman says, though, is, "Lord, help me." And she got down on her knees and worshiped him. She dropped the title son of David. She dropped her Jewish approach. She got on her knees in a helpless, humble way and said, "Lord, help me." When God puts you on a hold, take an inventory of what you are presenting to God in that prayer. What are you holding up for God to answer a prayer about? Jesus did not meet her needs based on the nice words that she was saying, "O son of David." He didn't care about that title. It was just a gracious way she thought she was going to get in. Neither did Jesus meet the needs of Nicodemus. If you recall, Nicodemus approached Jesus with the title, "No man can do these things except God be with him." Now that's nice. But Jesus said, "Appreciate that, but you got to be born again." So when God puts us on hold, keep trusting in God, take personal inventory of where you stand with God, and number 3, surrender to God your whole life. Your outstanding theological evaluations will get you nowhere with God. He don't care about that. Jerry Vine comments on this passage, and it goes like this. This is quoting him. "We do not come to Jesus through a Jewish door. We do not come to Jesus through a Baptist door. We do not come to Jesus through a Methodist door. We do not come to Jesus through a Pentecostal door. We come to Jesus through a sinner's door." That's the only way to get to Jesus. Jesus was not being disrespectful to this lady when he said it's not right to take the children's bread and cast it to the dogs. Now, at that time, Gentiles were thought of as dogs. Can you believe that? An entire race is looked down on as dogs. But he wasn't calling her a dog, but using the word often given to the Gentiles. And the woman said, "I know I'm called a dog, but even the dogs eat the crumbs which fall from their master's table." I know we got this nickname of being dogs, but that should not stop me from getting a blessing from you, Lord. This woman did not care what people called her. She was willing even to have the Lord call her that, if that's what it took. That embarrassing, degrading name, even if that was the position that the Lord wanted her to be in. That was fine. This woman was in desperate need for her daughter. Her daughter was desperately hurting. She's praying for her daughter to be delivered from tormenting demons in her life. This woman was confessing her total dependence upon God. With this lady, there were no strings attached. Have there been times that we've placed conditions upon how God will meet our needs? Have you said, "God, I need your help, but I will not stoop down and allow others to call me names. I will not be caught catching the crumbs off the table. That's not my style. I will be called by a popular name, and I will sit prominent places and be recognized as somebody. You can come there and answer my prayer." That's the reason many folks miss out on God's blessings. They don't want to be humble. They want to set limitations on where God places them. Not this woman. You can place me anywhere. You can place me at the table, on the table, under the table. I'll take the crumbs. I am depending on you. Whenever you believe God has put you on hold, keep trusting Jesus. You may not have all the answers now, but Jesus will never, ever forsake you. Take a close look at where you stand with God. Whatever you need, Jesus is all you need. If it's salvation, Jesus is your Savior. If it's comfort, Jesus is your comforter. If it's advice, Jesus is your counselor. If it's healing, Jesus is your healer. If it's wisdom, Jesus is your teacher. Jesus is right for whatever is wrong in your life, in my life. When you have to wait for an answer, keep your eyes on Jesus. Keep trusting Jesus. Take personal inventory and surrender and be humble your entire life to God.